My mother sent a message the evening before my gathering. "We won't make it. Your sister recently relocated as well." No phone call, no explanation, just words on a glowing screen piercing through the darkness. So I smiled, extinguished the candles I'd arranged for them, and secured the entrance to an evening that would proceed without them. 7 days later, while cameras documented my new coastal residence for a home design network, that same device wouldn't stop alerting, unanswered calls accumulating like waves. And believe me, that television appearance was merely the beginning. Before I share what happened afterward, let me ask you, have you ever been silently dismissed by those closest to you? When I was 8, holiday mornings always began with the click of my mother's shoes on tile and the aroma of fresh pastries. Emma, my younger sister, would already be positioned near the decorated tree, ribbons woven through her hair, beaming as though daylight itself had selected her first. "Open yours, sweetheart," Mother would say, presenting Emma with a large package wrapped in shimmering paper. I waited for mine, a smaller one placed aside. Inside, every year, something utilitarian. Warm clothing, a journal. "You enjoy documenting things," she'd remind me, as if predictability were a virtue. When I was 10, Emma performed on stage at the community festival. Ivory dress, coral ribbons. The audience applauded as though she'd discovered happiness itself. Father lifted her skyward and proclaimed, "That's my daughter." 7 days later, I returned home with a first-place certificate from the regional science competition, a solar-powered vehicle I constructed from salvaged materials and aluminum. I remember extending it toward him, anticipating the same spark in his expression. "That's pleasant," he said. "Just manage your time better." Then he returned his attention to the television. By 12, I discovered that remaining unnoticed was safer. When Emma joined the performance squad, there were celebrations, gatherings, new equipment for her activities. When I qualified for the State Technology Academy, Mother simply noted, "Remember to assist Emma with her literature assignment later." It was never malicious, just absence, a consistent overlooking that accumulated like sediment on a surface. I discovered my sanctuary in the old workshop behind our residence, where the scent of pine and metal filled the space. I'd sit on the floor, smoothing aged planks until my muscles ached. One summer day, I constructed a modest table, unbalanced supports, imperfect edges, but it held firm. I ran my palm across the wood and thought, "This belongs to me." It was the first creation in my existence no one else could claim. That table accompanied me through every transition afterward. When I departed for university on an academic scholarship, I left behind the family photographs on the wall, but carried that table. I restored it, transported its weight up 3 flights of stairs into my residence hall. It became my workspace, then my design surface, then the foundation of every project I'd ever create. Mother used to say Emma was the soul of the family. Perhaps she was, but I was the framework, the support beams no one acknowledged until they fractured. That was the year I ceased seeking validation and started constructing it instead. The message arrived on a Thursday afternoon while I was completing coordination notes for the residents. The ocean outside was turbulent, sky divided between gray and azure. My device vibrated once, just a slight pulse against the stone surface. "We'll skip your gathering. Your sister recently relocated as well." No greeting, no inquiry, just that statement. For a long moment, I examined the text. The reflection of the words shimmered across the window glass. My thumb hovered above the keyboard, then settled on 2 words. "That's fine." I pressed send, then placed the device face down. The kitchen was silent, except for the ocean's voice. I could smell pine oil and paint, remnants of everything I'd built independently. Across the room, the extended dining surface I'd designed for the evening caught the fading light, its finished surface stretching toward the sea. 15 chairs evenly spaced. No position of prominence. Somewhere deep within, something transformed. Not the kind of pain that seeks sympathy, the kind that decides it's finished waiting. I walked to the window, fingers tracing the cold glass. My reflection stood layered against the horizon, small but unwavering. I wasn't upset. I was aware. I powered down my device completely, sliding it into a drawer beside a folder labeled attendance roster. Then I opened my journal, the one with the leather binding I'd carried since university, and drew a line down the center of a blank page. On one side, I wrote those who always had presents. On the other, those who never did. The list filled more rapidly than anticipated. relatives forgotten at celebrations, companions who dined alone at family occasions. My grandmother, who was told she conversed excessively at meals. I underlined each name slowly, the pen pressing grooves into the paper. When I finished, I looked toward the ocean again. The horizon glowed faintly golden, a thin line between day and night. I closed the journal. This time I wasn't waiting to be included. I was arranging the gathering myself. That night I remained awake. I stayed in the main room with the windows open, the wind from the Pacific moving through the wooden beams. Every sound, waves, hinges, the creak of wood, felt like guidance. If my family could dismiss me with a message, I would reimagine the space itself, not to prove my worth, but to create what they never did. Belonging. I began with the plan. At 2 a.m., I spread tracing paper across the dining surface and sketched the blueprint of a single evening. Lines, angles, light sources mapped like an architectural endeavor. At the top, I wrote in pencil, "Everyone has presence." By dawn, the page was covered in notes, guest names, measurements, lighting, temperature, surface placement. I marked where each chair would go, ensuring no one's back faced the ocean. Equal sightlines, equal light. I drew the path of the evening like a floor plan for belonging. The next morning, I opened my laptop and sent messages. Brief, clear. Dinner this Saturday. My residence by the coast. Come ready to enjoy. Then I began contacting people from the list. Sarah, my university friend who never had anyone waiting at arrivals. Marcus, my cousin, who'd been excluded from the last family reunion. Aunt Patricia, who used to eat in the kitchen during celebrations because she spoke too enthusiastically. Their voices carried disbelief first, then warmth. "You're hosting?" they asked. "It's time," I said. By noon, I was already establishing the foundation. The residence was alive again with motion, the rhythm of deliveries, the smell of salt and wood treatment. I moved methodically, clipboard in hand, marking boxes as if this were a construction site. Surface linens, 15 settings, cream and gray. Candles, unscented, plates identical. No hierarchy in pattern or size. At the supply store in town, I purchased cord for hanging lights, marine-grade fasteners, and a roll of weather-resistant fabric. When the clerk asked if I was organizing a gathering, I said quietly, "Something like that." He smiled, not knowing he was providing me the materials for a small revolution. Back at the residence, I moved from task to task with precision, checked the vendors list for catering, signed invoices for flowers, measured every candle's placement on the surface's center line. Even when tension pressed behind my ribs, my hands stayed steady. Whenever frustration stirred, I returned to the old habit, touching the table's edge, feeling the grain of the wood until it anchored me. Helen, the local culinary expert, arrived that evening, a woman in her 50s with steady hands and a calm voice. She asked, unpacking ingredients, "What kind of dinner is this?" I paused, watching the sea fade to gray behind her. "It's a surface for people who stopped being included." She smiled faintly, as though she understood something deeper than I'd said aloud. The next 2 days moved like choreography. Lights strung low enough for warmth. Wildflowers gathered from the cliffs. A faint mix of eucalyptus and lavender drifted through the hall. I left handwritten cards at every place setting, each one simple. "You belong here." On Friday evening, as I checked the glass panels for wind integrity, the television crew arrived earlier than scheduled. They'd filmed the residence months ago, and the producer had messaged that they wanted one last footage of the finished space. I agreed without hesitation. It felt appropriate. The house had been born in silence. It should be witnessed that way, too. They filmed quietly, cameras floating through the golden light. No dialogue, just the sound of the ocean and the sound of dishes being placed. I kept working while they filmed, securing fixtures, adjusting chairs, brushing dust from the stone surface. One of the cameramen whispered, "You move like you designed it." I didn't respond. He wasn't incorrect. By midnight, everything was ready. The main room glowed in soft amber light. The oak surface stretched parallel to the sea, linen smooth, utensils gleaming, candles unlit. I stood at one end, the air cold against my skin. For a moment I saw it as they would, a space made equal. No position of prominence, no conversation that stings, no comparisons, just chairs waiting. I walked the perimeter of the surface, my fingers brushing each one. 15 touches, small, deliberate. It was the same rhythm I used when inspecting beams for strength. Tap, press, move on. The sound of my own breath echoed against the glass. When I reached the final chair, I stopped. Outside, the waves hit the cliffs harder, as if rehearsing the soundtrack for what was coming. I checked my list one last time. Guests confirmed, delivery settled, vendors paid, every detail balanced, every task complete. The next evening, the first headlights wound up the hill. Through the glass, I saw silhouettes stepping out of vehicles, Sarah's children running toward the entrance, Aunt Patricia clutching a pie wrapped in a towel. Their laughter carried over the sound of the sea. Inside, I lit the candles one by one. The flames swayed gently, reflecting in the glass wall, until it looked as if the whole horizon were alive with light. The surface weighted wide and even. The scent of herbs and roasted fish filled the air. When the last guest arrived, I closed the entrance behind them. The hum of conversation rose, soft, hesitant, then sure. I took my seat halfway down the surface, not at the end. No toasts, no speeches, just the slow rhythm of utensils against plates and the warmth of voices that once had nowhere to go. From the terrace, the sea was black and endless. Inside, the residence pulsed with quiet life. For the first time, it felt complete. Not because my family was missing, but because every chair was finally occupied. The television episode aired the following week. I hadn't planned to watch it, but that evening, the residence was full again. Sarah, Marcus, Aunt Patricia, even grandmother. Someone projected the show onto a white sheet along the terrace, the sea whispering below. The opening shot panned over the cliff, the camera rising toward the house. My house. Light spilling through the glass like golden water. The narrator spoke over the waves. When designer Olivia Chen built her oceanfront residence, she wanted to create a space where everyone had presence at the same surface. I heard my own voice recorded months earlier, calm, detached. Fairness isn't decorative. It's structural. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the wind brushing against the railing. Then Sarah exhaled, a sound between pride and disbelief. "You said that," she whispered. "You actually said that?" I smiled faintly, my eyes still on the screen. I did. The episode moved between aerial shots and close-ups. My hands aligning silverware, sunlight cutting through the wooden beams, Helen stirring chowder. Then the surface, the long oak expanse stretching toward the horizon, candles flickering like small, steady heartbeats. When the credits rolled, applause filled the terrace. I leaned back, breathing in the salt air, thinking it was finally over. That's when my device began to vibrate, once, then again, then continuously. The screen lit up repeatedly. "Mother, Father, Emma," I let it alert. Sarah noticed. "Are you going to answer?" she asked. "No," I said quietly. "Not yet." By morning, there were more than 30 unanswered calls, followed by messages. "We saw the show. Why didn't you inform us? Everyone's discussing it. Then, you embarrassed us. And finally, contact me." I didn't. I opened my journal instead, checked off the last box on the list, dinner completed. The surface stood empty now, but the candles still smelled faintly of salt and citrus. At noon, grandmother called. "They'll try to rewrite it," she warned softly. "They'll say they were misunderstood." "I know." "Then don't argue," she said. "Just let the truth exist in the open. It's stronger there." An hour later, my device buzzed again. "Mother." I answered this time, placed it on speaker, the sound filling the same kitchen they'd ignored for years. Grandmother sat beside me, tea in her hand. "Olivia," Mother began, her tone falsely gentle, "we watched your episode. I think there's been a significant misunderstanding about what happened. They made it sound like we excluded you. That isn't accurate. Your sister was relocating that weekend. You know how occupied things become." I looked at the sea through the glass wall, its surface flickering with light. "You excluded me in your own words, Mother. I still have the message." Silence. Then the familiar shift, the defensive tone, the practiced rationality. "You're overreacting again. We've always supported you. We just didn't think you'd want to make a spectacle of a gathering. You've always been so reserved." Grandmother's voice cut in, steady, measured. "Linda, stop. I've watched you do this since she was a child, always directing the attention away from her." "Mother, this isn't the time." "It's the only time. Grandmother said. Every celebration, every occasion, you built the whole house around Emma's comfort. You told yourself it was fairness. It wasn't. It was favoritism. Mother's breath caught. That's not accurate. It is, Grandmother said quietly. And now the entire community has seen it for what it is. The line went silent. I could hear my father in the background muttering something about drama and attention. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The weight of silence was finally theirs to hold. When the call ended, Grandmother looked at me over her teacup. You didn't need to win, she said. You just needed to stop carrying it. Outside, gulls circled the cliffs, their cries sharp against the steady sound of the surf. The residence stood in full light, its glass walls reflecting the horizon. For the first time, justice didn't look like triumph. It looked like balance. 2 days later, the house was quiet again. The chairs were still pulled close from the dinner, the linen faintly creased, the air still holding the smell of salt and citrus. I walked barefoot through the main room, each step echoing against the glass. The sea outside had calmed, gray, steady, indifferent to everything that had unfolded. My device sat on the counter, face down. I hadn't activated it since that call. Instead, I opened the terrace entrance and let the wind move through the house, carrying away the heaviness that had resided there too long. For years, I'd built spaces for others to belong in. Now I understood I'd been building toward this silence all along. That evening, I invited only 3 people back. My parents and Emma. No cameras, no guests, no surface for 15. Just a small one near the fireplace, the old pine table from my childhood workshop. Its surface still carried faint marks from when I'd first smoothed it as a girl. I set 4 plates, poured beverages, and waited. When they arrived, they looked smaller somehow, the sound of the ocean pressing behind them. My mother ran her fingers along the chair's edge. It's beautiful, she whispered. Different from what I imagined. It's home, I said simply. Dinner was quiet. The fire crackled. My father complimented the food. Emma stared at the surface, her voice finally soft. I didn't know, she said, that it hurt that much. I nodded. I didn't know how to express it. No one apologized. No one had to. The silence between us wasn't conflict anymore. It was space. My mother exhaled, slow and unguarded. You did well, Liv. Really well. It wasn't redemption. It was recognition, and that was enough. After they left, I stayed by the fire until the embers dulled. The waves outside kept their rhythm, the same one I'd heard my whole life, only now it didn't sound like distance. It sounded like return. I stepped out onto the terrace, the night air cool against my skin. Below, the sea breathed in slow rhythm, endless and sure. I laid my hand on the old pine table, tracing its worn edge. For years, I waited for their chair to open. Now I construct the whole surface myself. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, this story was for you. Olivia's silence wasn't weakness. It was design, structure, control. Sometimes walking away isn't losing. It's rebuilding on your own terms. If that moment when she closed the entrance and chose peace over permission stayed with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to establish a boundary so firm it changed everything? I read every story you share. It's how this community stays genuine. And if you want more stories where justice speaks in silence, subscribe. There's always another quiet resolution waiting to be told.